gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
What is going on, CaneSport? It is Izubee Charles, and good morning to you all. It is June 8th, 2023, and I would like to thank everyone for joining us on this episode of Good Morning CaneSport. Today, I'm joined by Stephen Wagner as we break down the news of the day. First up this morning in your Miami Hurricanes news, Steve and I will be heading to Coral Gables right after we wrap up this show for yet another Mario Cristobal football camp today. We expect a ton of talent today, with the offensive defensive linemen, taking place, and as well as the 7-on-7s. So make sure to stay tuned on the website later today as we have updates with some of these top prospects that are going to be in Coral Gables today. To hold you over till then, we have a ton of recruiting news leading up to this huge official visit weekend. Steven, I want to ask you, how big do you think this weekend is for Miami with all these 5 stars, all these big-time players coming down to Coral Gables for those official visits?
You know, I really do think that this is probably the biggest recruiting weekend that Mario Cristobal has ever had. I can't remember the last time that Miami had an official visit weekend this big. I mean, I'm sure, if you went back to Randy Shannon, whenever he had a couple of really good recruiting classes, he probably had some times where he got 4 or 5 stars down to campus and like 6 4-stars or something like that, something ridiculous. I think that this is absolutely the biggest recruiting moment that Mario Cristobal has had since he became Miami's head coach. I mean, you look at this weekend's visitor list, you're going to have Colin Simmons, you're going to have a 5-star edge in Colin Simmons, another 5-star edge in Dylan Stewart, who is the number 1 overall recruit in the On 300. Then you've got 5-star defensive lineman David Stone. And then on top of that, you've got 5-star corner Ellis Robinson, who right now is committed to Georgia, but Miami has been aggressively trying to flip for some time. And then that's not even mentioning Aiden Breland, another top 35 defensive lineman who is a really high 4-star, very close to being a 5-star. And then Jarrett Gibson, the number 2 running back in the country, who right now it kind of seems like Texas is in the lead for him, but Miami has definitely emerged as a real threat here for Jarrett Gibson, and I expect Miami to continue to make a very aggressive push for Gibson. He's already been down to Coral Gables a couple times for unofficial visits, and he's going to be returning now for an actual official visit. I think Mario Cristobal, I'm not sure if it's low for season yet, but I feel like it's probably on the horizon. I think it's probably within sight for a lot of Hurricane fans. And this is going to be an absolutely humongous recruiting weekend. I think Mario is going to have something really special up his sleeve. It kind of seemed like last week for most of the official visitors, Miami kind of, rolled out the same sort of stuff that you probably generically would roll out for most official visitors coming to your program. But I think for these guys, I think the staff and, Mario especially as good of a recruiter as he is, understands that you are going to have to pull something really special out if you're going to really impress 4 5-star guys, including one that's already committed to Georgia. So this is I think I don't think it can be stated how massive of a recruiting weekend this is.
Yeah, I spoke with, obviously, everyone knows Dylan Stewart's coming this weekend, the number 1 player in the 2024 class according to On3 rankings. And I asked him, I was like, hey, I mean, obviously, you're the big guy coming, you're the number 1 prospect in the country, but Miami has a lot of other big guys coming too. And he simply said, hey, they're doing something right in Coral Gables to be attracting, all of us 5 stars, especially across that defensive line front. And when I just asked him, what was the biggest reason that he wanted to come to Miami for an official visit, what was his interest in Miami, he really told me the opportunity to be coached by Jason Taylor is the biggest kind of reason that he really likes Miami. Also, his relationship with Coach Cristobal. He really also likes the city of Coral Gables and South Florida itself in Miami. and just a bunch of other stuff. So make sure to check that article with Dylan Stewart, kind of previewing his official visit this weekend, along with a bunch of other top prospects in that 2024 class. And kind of sticking with this, official visit weekend, we have two guys that aren't as highly ranked as the Dylan Stewarts and David Stones and Aiden Brulins in 2024 linebacker Keyshawn Flowers and 2024 defensive lineman TJ Lindsey. Steven, you spoke with both of those guys who aren't as high profiled as the guys that we spoke of. What are your impressions of after talking to them?
Well, when we say high profile, we simply mean that, they aren't a top 50 recruit in the country, which is basically, the real headliners that Miami's going to have on campus this weekend. But TJ Lindsey's a guy who has been very heavily recruited by a lot of different programs. He's also got official visits to Texas A&M and Texas. So those are a couple of programs. Arkansas has also recruited him very heavily. And then with Keyshawn Flowers, Notre Dame is going to be the really big competition on that front. So these are guys who do have other very legitimate Power 5 interests. These are both guys who I think it's safe to say that they're probably seen a little bit more as projects and maybe not as immediately game ready as some of the other 5-star talent coming to campus this weekend. But they are seen as guys who do have serious potential at Miami. We've got TJ Lindsey, who is probably going to be used in kind of edge rushing positions. He's also being recruited as an interior defensive lineman by some other schools. And then Keyshawn Flowers, they see him as a really, really talented linebacker with a lot of potential, as does Notre Dame. With Keyshawn, it really does feel like Miami, Notre Dame, those are really kind of the two really big names that are after him. Maryland's also in that mix, and same with I believe Virginia is also up there. You might want to double check me on that, but I believe Virginia was also in that mix. So all of these guys, it really does seem like they may not be the biggest names, but Miami is bringing them to campus this weekend for a reason, and these other schools are also pursuing these guys for a reason.
Yeah, TJ Lindsey is a guy that I really like. I turned on his tape, and I was really impressed with what I saw from him transferring to IMG Academy for his senior year. So definitely a guy to monitor as this recruiting process takes place in the fall, and guys are putting on their senior tapes. And Keyshawn as well. When I spoke with him when he first got that Miami offer, he told me how good of a relationship he began building with Coach Derek Nicholson, and another guy that I loved his tape, big physical linebacker that can move as well. So definitely two other guys that are visiting this weekend to definitely keep your eye on, and we will have stories on them once their visit concludes. Now, obviously this weekend is huge, but we also had a very, very big priority target on campus yesterday. Steven, one of South Florida's finest, one of my favorite players in this 2024 class, 4-star Shamadan Madani safety Zaquan Patterson was back on campus yesterday at Miami. I feel like he's been on campus quite a few times this spring. So just what was his impressions of his most recent visit to Miami? And what did you guys talk about?
Yeah, so I entered an RPM prediction for Zaquan to land at Miami some time ago. I believe it was back in March after he took a spring unofficial visit to the Hurricanes. He's now visited Miami, I think it's something like 7 times or something like that. To put this in perspective, I think Jeremiah Smith has visited Miami 9 times. So this is a guy who is a huge priority for Miami and really a huge priority for everyone that's after him. He recently dropped the top 5 of Michigan, Ohio State, and then Auburn and Florida State, along with Miami. So, that kind of gives you an idea of the programs that are really high up there for him. He does plan to take official visits to all of those programs. He doesn't have any official visit dates set in stone yet, but I did learn talking to him that he does have a timeline. Excuse me, I did learn in asking around that he does have there is a period that he's looking at potentially taking that official visit to Miami. It's starting to sound like it'll probably be an in-season visit. He's said repeatedly that he's planning on committing a little bit closer to signing day. Could potentially see that move up if something just feels right. But to me, it really feels like right now he probably is leaning more toward announcing a commitment a little bit closer to signing day in December. He even talked theoretically about announcing that the state championship game, which I thought it was funny that he already knows he's going to be in the state championship game, but that's kind of another thing. To me, it felt like Miami getting him down to campus today was really part of kind of a concerted effort that the Canes are making to make sure that he understands how big of a priority that he is. He visited Miami for their Elite Junior Day on May 13th, whenever they had that big pool party at Mario Cristobal's house. Now he's back on campus again. Earlier this week, he said that he'd been in contact with Miami's coaches, and they'd been telling him that they definitely wanted to get him back to campus. And today just happened to be a day that worked, so he went ahead and went on down there. But certainly, it's been very well established that he is a priority target for the Canes, and they're recruiting him like one.
Yeah, I can't imagine if Miami was able to pull off, most of that 2024 Chaminade Madonna class. That would be insane with Patterson, JoJo Trader, Jeremiah Smith, and those guys. And it's really funny that he mentioned about being in the state championship, but you can't blame him. That school's been, I think, the last five out of the last 6 years they've been in a state title game. So definitely going to be another guy to monitor, like I said, as his recruiting process picks up and we get closer and closer to signing day. Also on the site this morning, we have another installment of our Inside the Lines series, this time with 2024 four-star tight end KJ Duff, a guy that I really, really like. Met him a while back before he had the Miami offer. Just an awesome, kid on and off the field. Obviously, his play on the field speaks for itself. But as you'll see in this interview with KJ Duff, this kid is a well-rounded kid, and I really, really think everyone is going to like this interview with KJ Duff. So make sure to check that out. Before we move on, I just want to touch base with the story that we had on the site, I believe 2 days ago. We met two of our CaneSport followers at Mario Cristobal's camp last Sunday. It was Mr. Perry Thompson and his son Tristan Hutchinson from Wiley, Texas. And we kind of, did a nice story. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you guys are watching this morning, but we did a really nice story on, kids coming from across the country, big Miami fans coming to, chase the dream of potentially getting an offer from Mario Cristobal and the Hurricanes. It's a really nice piece that we have, touching base with some of our loyal followers and fans, and hope you guys really can tune in, read that story, and enjoy it. But before we moved on, I just wanted to give a shout out to Tristan Hutchinson and our guy Perry Thompson. Thank you guys for watching. Also on the site this morning, we do have our continuing series counting down the top 50 players post-spring, and we're at number 15. I feel like we've been flying through this list, but number 15 is tight end Cam McCormick, our transfer from Oregon, the 9th or 8th year transfer from Oregon, I believe, who, Miami thinks he can make an impact to the team, obviously bringing him from Oregon, previously playing under Mario Cristobal. So make sure to check that out on the site. Steven, I wanted to ask you, do you think, this is kind of just a random question, do you think a 8th or 9th guy in college football, is that something we're going to continue seeing, or do you think this is just kind of a one-off type of thing?
So I have never, ever, ever heard of a 9th year senior in college football until I heard of Cam McCormick. I do think it's possible because I've heard of 6th year guys, and I think I actually heard of one 7th year guy. He was a baseball player who had like back-to-back medical red shirts to start his career. And then he had the COVID year, and then he had like one more medical red shirt or something like that, or he applied for a waiver and got it. And he was like a 6th year or a 7th year guy. I want to say he was a 7th year guy. So I'm not necessarily sure if this is something that we can exactly say is going to be the norm. I mean, I don't think it's fair to expect us to have a bunch of Brandon Whedon type, 27, 28, 29-year-olds running around playing college football against a bunch of guys who are still underage and are still probably using fake IDs to get into bars. Not that any college student ever in the world would even consider doing something like that, whether they're a student athlete or not. I can't even imagine someone partaking in such felonious behavior. But I can't say that I think that that's going to be the norm, but I do think that we're going to continue to see more and more guys kind of taking these fifth years and sixth years and what have you. I think one factor is going to be obviously all the changes to eligibility rules and the transfer portal. And all that stuff and all the different ways that you can apply for additional years of eligibility. Not to mention, I mean, obviously you've got medical red shirts and normal red shirts and all of that kind of stuff. We won't have the COVID year moving forward, so that won't really be a factor. But I do think that NIL is going to play a little bit of a role in getting some of these guys to come back. I mean, look at Blake Corum at Michigan. That really is Exhibit A, the running back. Guy who Jim Harbaugh, told him, hey, man, you need to go to the league. If you go to the league now, you are going to make a very nice bag. You're going to get a nice little hoard of guaranteed money that, really has the ability to change your life. But Michigan's NIL collective put together a very enticing package that encouraged Corum to stick around another year because he was going to be making more money in this 1 year sticking around and playing football at Michigan than he was if he just went to the NFL and ended up being like a second or a third or a fourth round draft pick. So I do think that is going to play a little bit of a factor into this as well. Just getting some of that top tier talent to consider staying in college football if they can get a deal that might be more enticing than what they would get at the professional level. So Cam McCormick, he's definitely the exception. He's not the rule, but I'm not ruling out that that's not going to happen again.
Yeah, hopefully those years in college football are going to translate to some success on the field for the Hurricanes and Cam McCormick, and wish him the best of luck, injury-free season, and hopefully, he does, bring an impact to this Miami Hurricanes roster. So that's all that we have for this episode of Good Morning CaneSport. Steve and I are off to Coral Gables, and we'll be providing you with updates throughout the day during this Mario Cristobal camp. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Make sure to tune in later on today, like I said, with updates. And for Stephen Wagner, I'm Izubee Charles. Thank you for watching and have a great rest of your day.